Hi, Dr. Molina. You were just saying that the only excuse for the meltdown of the planet is the ignorance. That is, people are so busy doing so many other things. And, not all of them, but a fair number of them are going to have to kind of reorder their priorities. And I think, would you agree that one of the number one things that we can all do is share this information? All become climate presenters. Yeah, I think each of us will have our own way of doing that, but there's, if you make this information available, does that sound like one of the things or some of the things that can be done?
Yes, I think you certainly have a very important point. It's very important to communicate everything that we're talking about here to society. And we recognize the scientific community has done a very poor job in communicating with people in general. Fortunately, things are changing here in the United States. There are surveys, and it's very clear that the number of people that now agree that climate change is happening and that we can do something about it, the number is clearly increasing. I, of course, didn't have time to explain that, but in part, the reason for what's happening now in terms of ignoring the science is that there has been a very well-funded campaign of disinformation, okay, which is to put climate change in doubt. That's very well documented, and there's a book by Naomi Oreskes and so on, which explains this very clear, because the people that organize this disinformation campaign are the same ones, the same people that got a lot of experience with smoking, okay? The fact that smoking the regulations were delayed by a bit more than a decade was a consequence of this very well-organized campaign with the media to just raise doubts about the science, okay? So that was certainly what happened with climate change. But then something else happened. It got politicized, okay? So it became a matter of belief for the Republican Party not to trust climate change science. On the other side of the coin, it's amazing. I repeat the consensus. I didn't give any specifics, but all the academies, the National Academies of Sciences all over the planet agree. All the big scientific organizations agree. So it's truly remarkable that, or at least officially, what is controlled by the scientific community, there's really no doubt about these questions. And let me just repeat, a misunderstanding might have been, we need absolute certainty to act. But that's nonsense. That's not the way society functions. That's why I came up many years ago with this example from climbing an airplane, okay, the pilot telling the people in the airplane that, don't worry, we have a technical problem. We'll probably make it anyhow. There's only 1 in 10 chance we won't be there. Okay. Sorry, but anyhow, that's the end.
I want to answer this question directly. We will be putting out a conference proceedings, and through the wonderful technical expertise here of the 9 Network, we're going to produce a really good first-class video. Certainly one that we've shown in the St. Louis area. Who knows where else it may be shown, but the people here are excellent. We've taken that approach. We totally agree with you. That's why we're having this conference. We have to get the word out and then maybe start a new environmental awareness as a result of this conference.
I'm in an awkward situation to ask you to be direct and concise in both questions and answers. So panelists and the audience, please be direct and concise. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Morgan, and I'm born and bred in St. Louis, but I've been currently working in the Netherlands within sustainability. And my question is kind of, again, talking about communication. I hope it doesn't overlap too much. But we've been seeing these data and these figures since I started college back in 2009. And it's kind of been the same rhetoric every time I'm in the United States. However, the rhetoric that we're seeing in Europe is a lot of the research is focused on technology and advancements, and it's got a different kind of focus on it. And so my question is, for all of you, in your experience, how have you seen, or is there any, what kind of collaboration is happening between American and European research institutions, and why might we be seeing this difference in focus and difference in rhetoric between these two continents?
Having worked on the climate issue in a really international capacity, one thing for me that was fascinating was recognizing so directly and profusely the degree to which skepticism is localized in the world. It's very Anglo. It's US, it's to some degree Canada, it's UK, it's Australia. Those also are the countries that dominate global media, so it can seem broader than that. But virtually every other of the 195 plus countries that exist, it's a very different context domestically. I still think that it's really profound the degree to which American science has led on this issue over the decades, as we've heard this morning. And I also think that what is really interesting in the US is even where climate change is politicized, we see action for reasons that aren't foremost driven by climate. So in Florida, there are tons of communities that are adapting to their flooding issue, whether or not they're directly drawing connections to climate change. The 5 states that have produced the most wind in the US in recent years all voted for Trump in the last election. So we have to take climate change into consideration to go big enough and fast enough, especially to keep dangerous climate change in check, but that is certainly not the case for every possible entry point.
I'm Pat Raven, and I've had the privilege of attending several of the sessions at the Vatican with my husband, Peter. So I consider myself relatively well educated on the subject. The problem is exactly that, it's communication. And I just wanted to share with you 2 ideas. One is the Garden Club of America has produced a professional PowerPoint presentation for their volunteers to use to go out and teach various groups about this issue. It was incredibly well produced, and we got to see it the other day. I'm very pleased with their forward activity on this. The other idea, beyond taking your civic groups into the community to educate, is to reach out to children. If every person in this room took 2 hours and went to speak for a high school auditorium to share this message with teenagers, they will convince their parents. And that's one of the most effective avenues into the discussion.
Thank you. Any comments?
We wholeheartedly agree, I think would be a safe summary on that one. And I mean, I think the point of gardens being a wonderful entry point is something that everyone connects with and sees changes in their own yard.
Yes. I just want to add very briefly that it's very important to teach children all these issues, and that's the age in which they very rapidly acquire new values. So they become environmentalists, protect the environment, and in their homes, then they go and help and do these sort of things.
Thank you, Martin. We have another question here.
My name's Dane Kamen. I had a question regarding communications also.
Try this one.
My name is Dane Kamen. I also have a question regarding communication. Many of us in this room are quants. We deal with numbers. We like being proven things with numbers. We make a very small percentage of the population. People have been lied to with numbers for many, many years and are somewhat callous toward them. How can we communicate to everybody else to actually convince them that this is going on without relying on the numbers, which, like I said, people don't believe anymore?
Yeah, I can make a quick comment then, perhaps you also. I became part of the project. I was fortunate. I was able to lead it with the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which is the association that publishes the Science magazine. And what we did there is try to generate the document precisely having these sort of things in mind. But we work with professional communicators, and that's what is important. We cannot do that just as scientists, we're not taught, we don't have a good feel how to communicate with people. We need to use a different language. One very quick example. Jack showed, you showed some of the normal distribution curves. And we in the science world call, if you have a departure from the mean, that's the error. There's an error bar. You tell people we're talking about an error, they think you're wrong. Okay.
Right.
That's just wrong. So we need to use a different language, and we need to tell stories rather than just graphs. There are a number of things that we can certainly learn with communicators, and we have to improve a lot, certainly.
I totally agree. When I was at NASA, I actually had to go to a communication course for a couple of days. And most of us, engineers and scientists, exactly that's the problem. We do not communicate well with the average person. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge for those who work with detailed calculus and very powerful computers to come down to the level so that people can understand it. And I totally agree. We're trying to, I'm teaching a course in climate change, and it would be nice if I can get that word out. And the first 2 weeks I spend in that course is talking about all the miscommunication that's out there and showing why it's wrong.
We have one last question.
My name is Linda, and I've been interested in climate problems since the 70s. I'm wondering, to follow up on the last question and what you've just said, if possibly science curricula could be augmented by communications, some kind of rudimentary communications training. It seems more and more necessary.
I think that's absolutely right. And there is a huge amount of science on communications that has evolved, and some of the take-homes are so obvious that you'd think we'd be more with the picture, that we want hope, not fear. We want solutions, not problems. And for communication to be effective, there need to be uncommon messengers, there need to be local messengers, and then it should be about dialogue, not convincing.
If I can add one example, having been at MIT for many years, we carried out an experiment there because faculty from different branches, we got together with sociologists and economists and so on, and said, what can we do with the students? And rather than just adding another course to their curriculum, we said, let's get them involved in projects where they have to learn to talk to each other. And we had an example we chose because I was there, air quality in Mexico City. That requires not just science, but you have to understand how the government functions. It was a great success. The students really learned to talk to each other and to explain it to the public, and they were teaching us faculty how to do that, because we often only communicate with people in our own specialty, okay? And that's really something that needs to change.
Now, I just want to remind everybody, we're going to take a 15-minute break, move the whole schedule back 15 minutes, and that will get us sort of, we have time at the end between our last wrap-up and lunch and dinner.
I think we all have questions, but luckily we are sort of a small audience, and we can talk to our panelists during the break. Yeah. I'd like to thank you, our great speakers for the session today.